Just up here.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. Great.
Do I need the microphone? I'm ready to look.
Mate, you got a big voice anyway,
Yeah.
so we've got you here for 5 years to deal with the sales of the last one. All yours.
All right, kia ora everybody. The basis of my submission, I realise there's a lot of people that are well better at speaking to the very science of gene editing, and that you've heard from them, and I hope that their words can be. I want to decode what an uninvested scientist really is. Okay, so and how important science is, because science is very, very important to me. Public science for public good it's just so important. You do not need this committee. We don't need to put a committee of people or a government in such an awkward position on something if you have functional science. So my submission, I said about the DSIR, we fully funded it, we subsidised it, we put everything into it. Nowhere near as much money as what we put into GE. We have put so much money into this for very little tangible thing that we can see right now. Okay, so anyway, look, so we've got with public science, what we can do is we can have all of the facts laid out onto the table. What are the risks, and people can then make that assessment, from proper facts. What you've had in this committee is people that haven't come in and said, look, I'm personally, I stand to benefit from this because I have shares in the patent. Now, I believe that we lack the laws in this country to make sure that we can deal with what we've done. We've thrown a lot of money, of public money, out into this thing, which is called GE, which is like the new gold rush. The gold rush in this sort of technology started when the American government put $1 trillion out to Silicon Valley to create all of the things that were going to be these great assets. Then the commercial people got on top of it, and you created Google, and you created Apple, and you created all this thing. All great, okay? That's what we have today. But that horse is bolted for GE. It's so bolted. And what's happening is you've got all these people coming in to say, look, we want one last bite of the cherry. And you've got to say, when is enough? When have they had enough money? My second point for this committee is that as a regenerative farmer, I'm no different to any other farmer that suffered under this lobby. The methane thing that we're trying to address with GE isn't anywhere near as big as it's been made out to be by the very same lobby that stands to benefit from being able to sell these GE methane reducing tools. It's terrible outcome. So what we have in our soil, we've got mesenterics in our soil. The GE lobby around the world's noticed this. They want to synthesize those things and then sell them back to us, what we already get for free. We would have a lot more mesenterics in our soil if we can phase out urea, because urea ruins these. The DSIR was asked by this government to tell us whether or not it was worth us spending all the money to extend the industry to make more urea to put on dairy farms, and they said no, it's not. It's a waste of time. You get enough nitrogen from clover. And as far as the methane problem goes, if you want to call it a problem, we can get all of that reduction from Sane Point. Sane Point's drought resistance, because it's got a 2-metre taproot. It's full of safe tannins. It will reduce any methane that you want to do, and plus it will boost our production. That's what we want to do. We want to boost our production. Our scientific community in food and all that sort of thing, it's meant to be looking for an advantage for all of us, not for trying to mint products that supposedly we're all paying for as taxpayers and farmers, and then all of a sudden a very few select people jump on it, put a patent on it, make a startup, and then sell it overseas. Like if we'd sold Fonterra overseas, we'd be a poor country. It can't be. What's the worth of it if we don't even value it that much that we can't keep it here?
Thanks, Mike. We're getting very close to time.
Yeah, sorry. No, if there's any questions, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're right. And thank you for your passion and soil health and regen ag and all you're doing in that space, and for your comments and for presenting in front of the committee today. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, time, yeah. Thank you, man.
Good. Great comments.
Yeah,
I mean, he really called it out.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at prices for genetically modified seeds compared to conventional seeds, and see if I can quickly share my screen without crashing the stream, because that would be very funny. Actually, I'll send it to Stacey. Stacey, can you put this on the screen for me, please?
I think Mike made some really important points, actually, and it came up earlier in one of the videos that Sam was looking at from Ag Research, I think. No one in the committee asked them, so how did those trials in America go? Because they kept saying we had to go to America. It was a tiny little patch, to be honest. It was ridiculous. It sounded ridiculous anyway, the way he described it. After 20 years, so no one asked, how do those trials go? Oh, you're doing them in Australia. No one asked, how do those trials go? How have the trials gone for 20 years, guys, on the Ag Research grass, when, as Sam was implying, we know that mixed forage can reduce methane by 30%. So we know the solutions, well, at least some of the solutions, to do the very thing that they're claiming this project has spent millions doing. What have you got there, Stacey?
So this is the seed price index and USDA crop price index by genetically modified status between 1990 and 2020. You can see the price difference here. Seed price index for non-GM crops compared to seed price index for GM crops. And you can see the difference, how much more expensive it is to use GM crops.
And ironically, I thought you might have been throwing up another chart that came up last week, which was the canola price discount for GM canola. It looks like, I'm not quite, but it looks like the opposite of that graph. Imagine non-GMO being up there and the G canola being at a significant discount week in, week out in the farms of, I think it was WA, Western Australia. The other thing that Mike, the submitter just then, so he's really saying a lot of money's gone into this, and it's, so, and I think it's very important that people understand that the whole science system is designed to make money from patents. So the science is guided towards these product outcomes rather than a system solution outcome. So all our farmers, like he was talking about, have not been saying, we can fix this problem up by doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, like mixed forage. The other thing that I thought was very important is that this mention of the Silicon Valley, this mindset of computerization, technology as a computer kind of thing. And I think it's really important to just note that it is very much the tone of our time, actually. Everything can be done with the technology and we can work it through. And the problem is that nature is much, much more complex than we can currently have the capacity to understand. So we're always playing a game with our relationship with nature, and the technology is ratcheting up that game. It's ratcheting up the battle, the potential conflicts, and it needs to be managed. It needs to be regulated. It needs to, the liability and responsibility needs to be clearly put on someone, but not the public and not nature.
How much do you think, having been looking at other different countries and how they do GMO stuff, how much do subsidies play a role? Government subsidies?
That's a great question, Laura. So as far as I can tell, and again, I'm not an expert in the subsidizing of American farming, but it tends to be going through to the big corporates who are funding the GM monocultures, putting it into ethanol, putting it into animal feed. So it is a machine of, and buying the chemicals that go with it, like the Roundup. So there's a little bundle of subsidy that's, whether it's visible or invisible, it's definitely going on. And there's also other subsidies. There's a law going through various versions of it in different states to protect Bayer, Monsanto, and maybe other companies from being prosecuted for doing things that they shouldn't have done. And that's an interesting little, push the liability out of their jurisdiction effectively. But I think today it was $2 billion in Georgia. Bayer were charged with a fine. It was a mixture of a fine and compensation of $2 billion in one case in Georgia for the effects of Roundup, which expanded dramatically when they brought the GMO seeds in. And the courts are certainly believing that there's a link.
Yeah, and I imagine the subsidies too, probably going to vary from country to country. I haven't looked at Australia in terms of whether or not they subsidize, but I'm just trying to figure out a reason why GE canola is going down in price. Do you have any insight to why that could be happening?
People don't want it. I mean, all the major manufacturers have excluded GMO products from, certainly they'd have to be visible and labeled from the food system. So this goes to the very heart of what's going on here, Laura. The fact is that we have got labeling, and the labeling has allowed GMOs to be influenced by market response, and the market said that we don't really want them. So when they get labeled, people try to avoid them. Sometimes they're labeled and people don't avoid them, but there's not many of them in the New Zealand market because of that reason. In America, they weren't allowed that choice. So the whole project called the non-GMO project was created to allow people to say, oh, that product is non-GMO. But what this bill, and it's actually not just this bill excludes all these products from the regulations entirely. But there's another process, which is the food standards process, which has already started this and said, oh, and we're not going to call these GMOs anymore. And let's not label them either. Now, there's been a big pushback on that over the last few months in Australia and New Zealand. But meanwhile, this bill comes out. Unfortunately, the EU seem to have just gone backwards a little bit on their suggestions of regulation, but that's always an ongoing debate. So at one point they were going to have much better regulations of GMOs and gene editing, but now they're looking like they may not be as good as they need to be. The fight is not over. This is just be really clear, this is a global debate. And little New Zealand is being targeted because we have got a strong non-GMO policy. I didn't finish that point. All the supermarkets, like, you know, if you go to Woolworths or you go to New World, and it's a Pam's product, but both those major supermarket brands have got a non-GMO policy for their products, including the fresh vegetables that come from New Zealand. Now, the food industry in Europe has said, well, look, if you don't trace and label these new GE products, the price of food is going to go up. So we do need to have the supermarkets speaking up for not only their GE-free policy for their own brands, but kind of commit to not stocking gene-edited products unless they're labeled, to voluntarily labeling them once they come online. I mean, we might be talking a year or two away. It could be tomorrow. It could be imported from somewhere and we say, oh, hang on, we didn't expect that. Well, the supermarkets need to be prepared to stand up for the consumer. The consumer definitely wants the right to choose. I mean, we're talking about 80% of people surveyed say, and I'm not talking about GMOs, old-fashioned food, because, you know, the argument is, oh, that's the old GMOs, transgenics. This is new gene editing, non-transgenic. The issues are much more complex than that, and often they use transgenics in the gene editing process, so it's not even pure as they describe it. But the point is, if you don't trace it and therefore don't label it, the consumer can't influence the market, and the market fails. And that's what this bill tries to do. It tries to create market failure by taking away the public's right to choose. And 80% of the public support the right to choose. So no select committee or anybody should take that right away.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's this government in a nutshell. It's like create market failures and then get a bunch of investors in to, you know, sell a solution that wasn't required in the first place because, you know, we already had the existing framework that, you know, sure, it could have done with some improvement, but it didn't need gutting.
No, and that's one of the calls actually, is to why haven't they just reformed the HASNO Act? And there are calls for an investigation into the fact that they were directed by powerful ministers to say, don't look at HASNO, ignore HASNO, that's going. This is the new one, write a new one. Here's your guys, here's the industry experts who've all got vested interest, if not all, most of them, who's definitely have got patents in their names. And they'll be really helpful to work out exactly what industry needs to do this. Now, I mean, in a way, I think it's completely immoral and unethical, but in a way, okay, fair enough. This is the industry bill, but call it an industry bill, say it's an industry bill written for industry by industry, and then get all the experts and the public, like we're doing now, to say, oh, well, this is how it should look. Now, that select committee process isn't that, it's not a national debate. It's not a, you know, coming together to talk about a national food strategy. It's not the farmers have been quite clear, the ones that I've watched anyway. They're saying the guys up top who we're paying our fees to every month or every year, they're not representing our voice. And I thought, oh well, maybe it's just their mates. But when when Farmers Weekly put that last week's survey out, saying 75% of farmers do not think GE is going to improve our exports or, you know, our reputation. That's a lot of my mates. And I really did think, oh, maybe 30% of farmers understand this issue, maybe 50, 75% of farmers are now waking up against a lot of long-term propaganda saying, oh, this is going to solve your problems, mate. You just have a little bit of GE and it's all going to go away. Well, they're not buying it, and neither is the consumer, and neither are our export markets. The problem is our government's bought it. So we've really got to stop this bill.
I think we've got one more time.
Yeah,
I think we've got time for one more video. Sorry, I got that back to...
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.